Namaskaram. Welcome to Swaroopa Iyer, my very good friend, and I can say like a family member. And we have known her for some years now, and I'm a great fan of her work, Rukmini, Draupadi, and other books also. And she has been to a number of events all over India. And we are going through the book Avishi today, a chat about Avishi and a slight review with her. Avishi is the story of a Rigvedic queen, the first lady to be, endowed with a prosthetic limb. And the book has been published by Bloomsbury, and we are using the Desi platform Vayam. And we are very glad to do that. And I must also say that Sai Swaroopa is a person who not only writes but helps the other authors to publish the work, relentlessly. Whomever I talk with, they'll say, Rajesh, write a book. Then I'll say what to do with that. Then give it to Sai Swaroopa and she'll get it published for you. I'm serious, I'm not joking. There are about 20-30 people who told me this so far.
And, actually, most of the credit goes to Indic Academy because they gave such a strong foundation and platform, and that enables me to help other writers. And before that, it's a pleasure to come on to this platform, the Verandah Club, Rajesh Garu. I remember the Coimbatore trip and our meeting that happened almost 3 years ago. I think 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
I have really fond memories of that whole trip and about meeting all the the whole group of Verandah Club as well as Indic Academy who were in Coimbatore, and I would really love to return back, but at least we are doing it virtually. It's a pleasure to be on the Verandah Club, and congratulations on developing this whole platform, as well as this Vayam app is also developed by your team, right?
Our friends in Delhi, and we are the strategic input partners in Tamil Nadu.
Okay. But this is one of the most relevant steps in becoming Atmanirbhar, actually.
Absolutely. And our Prime Minister uses Vayam once in a way, regularly.
Okay. That's nice.
The last exam pe charcha was done in Vayam only.
Okay. Oh, congratulations again.
I will definitely tell the team Drupad Vipat and Gaurav Tripathi and Vijay Goel. I'll tell all of them, and I must definitely also appreciate the good and noble work of Harikiran Vadlamani Garu, who has been responsible for a lot of good activities and has encouraged a number of people to take up dharmic activities. In the years that I've met him and known him, he has tirelessly tried to encourage and
tireless, selfless, and if I can really, he exactly knows how to nurture each talent. He's somebody who knows how each author, activist, artist is different and unique, and he gives that exact path of path to progress. That's why he always remains the topmost of my people whom I'm really thankful to.
He's a very good mentor for so many, not so very visible, and I think true to Indian tradition, he has acted. He has been successful in his business, professional, family life, and now in this form also is extremely successful.
Yes.
In fact, that is how I got to meet so many of you, all the very good authors, and whoever has come on this on these platforms are doing so well today.
Yes.
And that is very, very heart heartful and very nice. I must definitely say that Avishi, who is none other than Vishpala herself, in the Rig Veda, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Rig Veda has 10,552 verses,
Roughly.
roughly. And you have managed to pull out a very interesting character out of that. And in spite of your technical background, your performance is fantastic. IIT Kharagpur is one of the, what do you call, one of the most important IITs. My school senior, who was Radhakrishnan, I think national third in CBSE, studied there many years
Oh,
ago.
ah,
I think later he went to Cornell and all that. I must definitely introduce Sai Swaroopa properly to the viewers of today and tomorrow. She is an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and an investment professional turned writer. She is the best selling author of 4 novels, including Avishi. All are based on legendary female protagonists from the ancient Indian Hindu world. She has also curated an anthology of short stories based on the Kurukshetra battle of Mahabharata, published once again by Bloomsbury only, Unsung Valor. Sai Swarupa is a curator at the Indic Academy and holds a certificate in Puranas from the Oxford School of Hindu Studies. A very diverse background and very interesting. You could have gone along with your professional world, and considering your IIT background would have done really well. But you have chosen to also take this path. And I was reminded, okay, now coming to the book, of an incident in Kishkinda when Lord Rama went over to that place, and Hanuman wants to know, and Sugriva wants to be reassured whether Rama is capable enough to handle Vali. So Rama sends one arrow through 7 trees, and it comes back to the quiver, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
And,
the Dundubhi skeleton, I think.
correct. Exactly. The Dundubi skeleton, Matanga Muni's ashram, I think,
Yes.
where Vali is forbidden to enter. So I was only reminded of that episode of the Ramayana and the 7 trees and the single arrow going through the 7 trees and coming back to the quiver while going through this book. Because the book is fast like the arrow, and it comes back to where it began, and it is also addressing everything that is connected to the India of today, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. A clear SWOT novel, I must say, because it is a novel based on Indian mythology, connected with the Rigvedic period. You will find the names of Mitra, Varuna, and the Ashwini twins at large. And we will also understand that the population was very, very low at that point of time in our country, in Jambudvipa. When I went through the book, there was something which caught my eye. The author has to correct me, and the audience will also have to correct me or, agree with me. One is, I found that the intellectual cultural community of India is represented in the Naimisha or in the novel. And the anti-Indian forces that we see are out to destroy only the Naimisha of today's India, as they tried to destroy it in the past. So that was the threat. We begin with T, the opposite side. I was wondering why the author was doing this kind of a story. There are two kingdoms, one republic and an intellectual platform. There is a discussion amongst the intellectuals, and they take and progress through dialogue, and they're trying to create a smriti. Perhaps the Manusmriti came later, after the Vedic period. The wedding, or as an institution called the marriage, was yet to be formalized, but people had partners and mates, and some of them mates for life also. There was a very good development with regard to ancient Indian medicine, which is very clear. You can find good kings and bad kings. The good king is Archishman, the bad king is Kela, and this bad king is like the Hiranyakasipu, is like the who wants to destroy the intellectual capital. We have Hiranyakasipus even today at large in India, and we only need the help of Lord Narasimha to manage them, because democracy has pillars, and finally Narasimha will emerge from one of those pillars and kick out the Hiranyakasipus who are in front of us today. So where is the opportunity in this book? The opportunity is to understand that the ancient Indian tradition believed in dialogue, in debate, and did not trust the opinion.
Yes.
It was a process. And there were leaders, and there were emancipated souls, and they tirelessly were in search of truth, wisdom, knowledge, and wanted everybody to feel comfortable spiritually and mentally before agreeing to something. Perhaps they took years together, or decades or centuries, to formalize a few things, and after only a well thought of strategy. So that is the opportunity. India has been a very tolerant society where tarka or debate was very much present, and pursuit of truth was very much evident and present again. Also at the same time, that was documented. People traveled all around the country as hermits, as bards, as monks, sages, and travelers, came back with the information, and they put it together and prepared the elixir called the Bharatiya Smriti, or a set of Bharatiya Smritis were created because of those experiences. So it's not that we do not accept anybody. It is just that we have not been accepted. And that has been brought out so well by Sai Swaroopa, and I'm so happy that is the opportunity that I see. And what is the weakness? Weakness is found in the form of people like Kela, the ruler who kills another earlier ruler called Ugra, who had also eliminated somebody else. And the kingdom Rishabhavati is going through a lot of things, and we are but reminded of these predatory empires which have existed, who forever plot, threaten, and when they help, they have a motive behind. If they're giving you medicine, they have a motive. If they're giving you food, there is a motive. If they're giving you weapons, it is even worse. The most dangerous is when they arm you, because they want you to finish each other. So, and that has been brought out, and that is getting something free. People think that even poison is delicious because they have not paid for it. And today we are living in a world where freebies are called something great socially. They call it social justice. But it is actually demeaning the society and also weakening the ability of the populace to grow and progress. Sometimes there are moments when we are weak, and if somebody comes forward to help us, and if those people are not the right kind of people, it is dangerous to accept their help. That is something which is a weakness which is evident in the society, because a large number of our people would immediately stretch their hand to get it just because it is made available. If you go and stand in a park, start distributing biscuits or chocolates, or tell them these are good for health, dates, or tell them that these are good for health, this. The entire 1,000 people who are walking in that big park will never hesitate to take one. And if you tell them you'll have to consume it at the stroke of 6, all of them will eat only at the stroke of 6. And if everybody had to swoon and fall down, you can remove all their private possessions and come away. It is so easy. So that is the weakness, the freebie weakness, the weakness of why should I suffer? That is because we are not ready to abstain or not ready to sacrifice. Abstinence and sacrifice actually help us, they strengthen us.
That's true.
But unfortunately, people are not ready to do that because they think, why should I suffer? Why should I not enjoy good things in life? And who are you to tell me that I should not enjoy? See, somebody is giving me a better monetary value for something, but for what? What are they going to do with that? If there's a formula to make a bomb, if somebody is offering $5 billion, and if I sell the formula for the bomb, they will come back and kill me and my country. We should understand that that is something which cannot be sold and that it is not negotiable. The author has brought that out in this book beautifully, where one neighbor tries to harm the other neighbor and does so without the knowledge of the ignorant neighbor, and thereafter tries to send some help. That a weakness in the society which throws up often when something sweet is offered is something that we should be aware of. Sai Swaroopa is making us aware of that. And what is the strength? In spite of this threat, in spite of this opportunity, and in spite of these inherent weaknesses, the strength is our knowledge tradition, the Indian knowledge system, the wisdom and awareness before empowerment. The story completely talks about responsibilities and awareness prior to any level of empowerment. Often we find people in the story where in Naimisha, where somebody does not want to become the leader, and also in Ashtagani, the other place where somebody does not want to become the Gana Mukhya, the head who is democratically elected. There are discussions. And we also get to see good rulers like Archishman, where not all the monarchs are bad. And we get to see bad kings like Kela and his kingdom at Rishabhavati. So beautifully portrayed. We find the Saraswati, we find the Ganga, and we find the Dandakaranyam or the Dandaka forest. Then we find people researching on medicine, on the preparation of artificial limbs, then training with regard to warfare, manufacture of weapons, and hunting, and so many other aspects, and how they take time to come to decide on certain things which are very important for the society. Some things which are well thought about. And that is very interesting, like the institution of marriage. How should it be? The debate goes on throughout, and there's a bit of romance and there's a bit of intimacy. All that has been brought out very well, and there is absolutely no vulgarity in the book, because intimacy and romance and companionship are very much part of life. We are very much part of that. We cannot, deny that in a narrative.
Part of Purushartha, actually.
That is part of Purushartha, correct. And oh no, that's not correct. You should not put this, that, no. And also the liberties taken by the author, Sai Swaroopa. I've read a number of authors who have all taken literary liberties, but they have done it in such a manner that after reading the book, you feel apologetic. You think that you belong to a set of useless people whose ancestors have been criminals, and that everything that your elders did was wrong, and that you should atone and get away with everything. Here there are plus and minus points with all ancestors, but our ancestors seem to have had more plus points weighed in their favor than the minus points. And the knowledge system, the system through which wisdom was created, that wisdom is the ghee, which has a larger shelf life. Today we are only talking about whiskey which is aged for 12 years, and whiskey which is aged for 18 years, 21 years. But our wisdom has milk is fantastic when it's out of the cow, but you cannot keep it for more than a day. If you convert it into curds, you can keep it for a few days, but then it becomes sour curd and it has to become an ingredient elsewhere. If you take the butter out, again, it has a better life than curd, but not sufficient. Once it is made into ghee, I am told that very good ghee which comes out in the organic process has a very long shelf life when compared to the milk. So the wisdom of the Indian system is like the ghee. So you look at the story of the cowherd of Vrindavan. From the milk to the ghee, he consumes it all. And he makes us understand that the ghee stays with you. He steals the butter, he steals the curd, he steals the milk and consumes it. But I don't see too many instances where Lord Krishna is stealing ghee, because he's left it for us, I think. It has a long shelf life and he expects us to retain it. And that is only the wisdom. So Sai Swaroopa has, given out the exposure. People are talking about exposure today. I really cannot understand what is this exposure. Why did you go there? My child needs this exposure. My son wants this exposure. My daughter wants that exposure. And then what do we do with that exposure? Minus of experience, the exposure is quite dangerous actually. People are not aware of that. I remember this famous line in my classroom. At the back side of the classroom, we had blackboards then, where the ranks would be displayed and some proverb will be there. If all the people born in this world had to see all the world or something, then it would be better if the world had never been. Something like that. I still, kind of remember that. So today, exposure. Oh, today, why did you go? No, I want my child to see that. What is it in that 5 or 10 minutes? They wanted to see something and come. Then it is given a jumble of things which it gets to see. And we are ourselves at loss as to why we showed it to the child and what did it make out of that. I think the child ends up biting more than what it can chew. In this story, Sai Swaroopa has done a very good thing. She has made the people understand what they need, what they saw, what they will get, and the consequences of their actions. There's this tribal girl called Majjari, a teenager girl who is the paramour or companion of Kela, who's pregnant with this child. Kela is the Hiranyakasipu in this story, not Hiranyakasipu in the Narsimha Avatara. And because of the exposure that she's told, not even experience, the crazy things that she tries to do are terrible. So, Avishi is a book which is for all ages, I must say. For somebody who is about 12, 13 years old, they should read this book because they'll understand the predicament of Majjari when they enter the adolescent period. That is the part of the book that they should pay attention to. As they get older and older and older, it is for, from 13 years to 83 years, everybody can read this book. For a simple reason, how does a person hand over reins to the next generation in a knowledge system? How do they hand it over in a democracy? How do they hand it over in a monarchical system? And how a monarch calls a debating society as an oligarchy, just to give it a name and denigrate it. All of this is brought out in a very subtle and simple manner and easy to understand manner in this book. And most importantly, it is the word craft is excellent and very good. In fact, I have taken a paragraph from this book for the Verandah Club forthcoming issue to put it as thought for the month with the due credit to Sai Swaroopa Iyer.
Oh.
That will be a suspense. When it comes out, everybody can see. There are a lot of things like this found in this book. Sometimes, too many punch dialogues make it too exciting or too difficult. But with all that, this book has been brought out well. And that is something really appreciable. And there are a lot of things. Who's a Gana Mukhya? A female Ganapati. Who's a Ganapati? The chief of a Republican settlement. Ganapati is also God. Who's a Kulapati? The head of a Gurukula. Who's a Rishika? The feminine gender for a Rishi. Sammohini. A herb with an ability to sedate the consumer, at times fatal. Senani, a commander of military forces. Santagrahi, a person with lightning memory, which I think Sai Swaroopa is anyway. I think she's an Eka Santagrahi.
Oh,
One time
no.
it is done. And Tuvaraka, what is that? Popularly known as Chalmogra, the tree was used in ancient and Indian and Chinese medicine to treat leprosy. Vritti Sangha, professional guilds in a Republican settlement. The chiefs of these bodies in turn represent the profession in a samiti. These guilds have all existed for a long time. I've seen professional guilds in the traditional way of life because I come from a family of jewelers. In fact, my late great-grandfather had made a representation to the government of the Madras Presidency 70 years ago.
Wow.
With regard to the lifestyle and the working methodology of these guilds. He said, the 8-hour shift may not be applicable for them because they'll work for 2-3 hours, relax, and then go back to work. They may, work from their house and there is no factory. So crush may not be necessary. And that their way of holidays will be different because they will take off for 4 or 5 days during the village festival and may work for 25 days without a holiday. And, and therefore, since that is their lifestyle, they should be, told how many days that they should take off in a year, but those days should be only decided by them and not by the state. So while looking at this story, I used to wonder why Tatay Garu was talking about all this. I have that speech with me still. So after reading this book by Sai Swaroopa, I was able to, get a better understanding. She seems to have understood that well through this book. And again, Kushta, leprosy. Then Mahishi. For us, we think it's a demoness. That Mahishi, Ayyappa goes to kill. That's the only Mahishi that people know in South India. But South India, Mahishi is also the queen. So, Sammohanastram. There is an astra also in the weapon system. Mahabharata. All of this, after reading a few books, you get addicted to these type of books. And I think Sai Swaroopa is the person who's induced us into this, and she's only creating this addiction. I have gone through about 30 or 35 books, and today I'm, I'm at ease when I talk about Mahabharata. I tell them about Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, and then I tell them who's an Ishada and who's the person who is, Suta, and who are the famous Sutas like Sumantra. Oh, Sumantra? And who's the Nishada prince? When I say Nala Chakravarti, are you sure? Go and check up. And all these things the Indic world has given us today. They're given not just a Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, the Bharatiya Samskara Tatparya Nirnaya. I would call it that only. Mahabharata, yes, is the name of a voluminous text by Vedavyasa. Mahabharata from Bharat today, I think if we have to go to the real Mahabharata that we hope to create in our lifetimes, I think this Bharatiya Samskara Tatparya Nirnaya by the Indic authors like Sai Swaroopa Iyer is extremely important.
High praise. Thank you. I cannot thank you for this kind of such a in-depth observation and analysis of the literature, Rajesh Garu, because a lot of readers, each reader finds something new in the story, and that particularly depends upon their experience and all. But this is the first time I'm encountering such a wholesome review. Some aspects that you mentioned were actually not consciously written. They came out in a subconscious manner, in a very intrinsic manner. Only after writing, I could sense that this is what was coming out. And even those aspects, you very well caught it, like the Tarka tradition of Bharat, and the whole this one about the experience versus learning. A lot of it was so intrinsically woven, and it's like very rarely readers pick on such in-depth issues from a book. So thank you. It's very, very satisfying as an author and a writer to have that in-depth analysis of the book. So Rajeshji, thanks again.
I'm so happy because you will only have to thank yourself and your tribe because of the books that all of you have produced over the last almost 7-8 years or so maybe. And the mentors who have given us this knowledge, all of us are fortunate to get these mentors. So quite naturally, it is like Kuchipudi or Bharatanatyam, where everything is brought out in the expression. There's a big audience. You have to be aware that the audience is there and still be blind to that. Therefore, you have to bring out the expression. If you look into somebody's eyes gone, you cannot give that posture or that expression. So it is like classical dance woven with music and the theme, which has been brought out very well. And I think this book is one of the pinnacles in your career. There must be more during the years to come by, having read the other books of yours. And this book is like finely woven, like a huge carpet of Indian culture, which is placed in front of the citizenry. I'm not saying this to flatter you. I fully understand that it is very difficult to write this book. It is not easy. I may give somebody $1 million to produce a book like this, and I don't know. It may or may not come out. They may be, in fact, able to write something which is very racy, which can become a blockbuster book or a movie. I'm not talking about the financial success. This is also financial success, but also at the same time, something which is long-standing. A sediment has to be created which stays back with us, a good aftertaste. And unless this book has been able to communicate, it is difficult for a person like me to come up with this kind of an analogy or a review. Let me tell that also, and that is only possible because of the tribe of the Indic authors and the good work of authors like Sai Swaroopa. Every time I read one of the Indic books and talk with the authors, I tell them whatever good that they have done. And And I would always think, let me see next time if I can find something else that is different, so that a different kind of a praise is possible. And I must definitely say, every time I'm finding something new and interesting. And that shows the innate strength of our culture and civilization. And it also shows that only the ones who understood that part of our culture in depth will be able to produce such books. And that is what will make it enduring. It is very important that these stories form the backbone of the society once again, because our society was greatly disrupted and destroyed in the last few hundred years, and particularly in the last 100 years, in the name of social justice, in the name of pseudo secularism, in the name of minority communalism, in the name of socialism, and where exploitative socialism was ruling the roost, where a few people were enjoying the benefits of the whole population. Actually, I would call it exploitative socialism, where 97% of the country earns the money to be paid to only 3% of the people. So I consider that system to be exploitative, and there is no fairness. Though we call it socialist, although socialist nahi hai. So in that kind of a society, it is very difficult. Our voices have been trampled upon. There's somebody stamping us with a heavy weight on our neck, on our chest. No, you need the energy of 1,000 elephants to come out of that, and then only talk and do something. So it is very challenging for the authors to take up the stance again, simply because they would also be criticized. They will be said, oh, you're very orthodox, you're very traditional, and very cliched words. Or they will say you have a very narcissist view of the Indian society. You're also part of that. And when you talk about Chanakya, they'll say, oh, Machiavelli, Indian. No way can you compare Chanakya with that. And when we talk about so many others like a Tenali Ramakrishna or a Narada, the ancient Indian journalist, people will definitely make fun of us. Here we find one of the people from Naimisha. He travels to Rishabhavati and comes back.
So yeah, in fact, the whole that group of people who travel and come back with the Smriti and they propagate, they were inspired by Narada. For me, when I was envisaging the story, Rajesh Garu, because one thing, Smriti alludes to that memory of what the Shruti says, what has been revealed, the memory of what has been revealed, right? That is the literal meaning of Smriti, as well as then the rishis of those days were very, very observant. And that was their tapasya. The traveling was their tapasya. Basically, Narada being a Triloka Sanchari, we call him, right? So his active participation in re-establishing dharma, that gets really, really underplayed because of the humorous phase that has somehow dominated.
So, very true. And why, I wanted to ask you, how did you decide on this story? Because it is found in one of the verses in the Rig Veda. You find this Vishpala. You have also explained as to how and the logic behind this. But prior to that, how did you zero on Vishpala and come to this Avishi?
Oh, yes. So that's an interesting story. When I was writing my first book, Abhaya, which happens to be my latest book to be relaunched by Bloomsbury, India. The story of Abhaya was set in the times of Mahabharata. It is basically Narakasura Vadha, the Bhagavata episode of Narakasura Vadha, told from the perspective of one of the women rescued by Krishna. So this protagonist is at times, and there was a scene where my protagonist is a young girl, very inquisitive, like any child is. and her father is trying to feed her her lunch and trying to tell her a story. And for this scene, I really wanted that story to be based upon female warrior. Only challenge here being that that female warrior had to be older than the Mahabharata types, obviously. So we grow up. I grew up listening to stories of Jhansi Lakshmi Bai, Rani Rudrama Devi, Ahilya Bai Holkar. These kind of warrior queens who are like 400, 500, 200 years older than us. So somebody, when Shivaji Maharaj grew up listening to the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata, told by his mother. So that storytelling has been a part of our Indian lives. So even in the Mahabharata, there is so many stories are told to the Pandavas. Except that here, I really wanted it to be about a warrior woman, which could be inspiring to a 6-7-year-old girl. And I started searching for women warriors before the Mahabharata period. Then there was Savitri. Savitri is a warrior, but
Definitely.
then her story, we don't know the warrior side of Savitri, but because her story is towards, it takes an intellectual turn, actually. And that story doesn't suit a, father telling a 7-year-old girl, 6-7-year-old girl. And there was Kaikeyi.
Absolutely.
Again, it takes a different level of maturity to understand Kaikeyi in a wholesome manner. Again, that doesn't suit a 6-year-old girl. So I started searching, and then I landed up. Then I resorted to Google, which returned some results, and one particular result talked about Rigveda, and I clicked upon it, and then it started about. Then it was actually it was a document. It was a medical document, a conference document from some Israeli medical university. Israeli Medical University. It was a conference. The conference was about prosthesis, and there was a chapter about history of prosthesis, where it started saying, something to the effect of prosthesis as an idea was mentioned for the first time in world literature in the Rig Veda, where Queen Vishpala was fitted a prosthetic leg by the Ashwini Kumaras. And then it went to the historical Greek and Mesopotamian and all the ancient cultures which used prosthesis. And I was, for a minute, I was stunned for two reasons. One, I used to be very proud of my own knowledge. And here was a story staring at me that I had never heard of. Two, I am getting to know about it from a foreign website and not an Indian web, not any Indian site. That made me wonder. I stopped thinking about the current story that I was writing, and I was thinking about how awesome and kind of thought-provoking that these ideas were found in the Rig Veda. And they were also, and the special, special aspect of this whole thing is that gods coming down and solving people's problems is nothing new. If it was just to be a miracle, they would have just given her leg. We have such, lots of such stories in the whole Puranic lore. Kannappa gets his eyes back. Things like stories like that are all over. But here the metal was mentioned. So the metal leg, which means it actually alluded to a scientific breakthrough. It's not like the gods could not give her, but there was a whole new breakthrough mentioned in the Rigvedic, corpus itself, and that made me stop and think that I had to write more about this. And unfortunately or fortunately, the material available was very, very less. There are just some 3 or 4 shlokas, 2-liners from in the Rigvedic Suktas, which mention just that she was a queen She lost her leg, and in the event called Khela's Battle, and then the Ashwini twins, they gave her back her prosthetic leg, after which she continued to fight. And trying to interpret it, some scholars, they thought Vishpala was a horse. I actually don't know what led to that assumption, but then Ayanacharya, his words are the most authentic to anybody interpreting Vedic corpus. He was a 12th century saint, 12th or 13th century saint. So in his interpretation, scholars, they stand with Sayanacharya's interpretation, like especially Ralph Griffith, who's he was the first person to, I don't know whether he's the first person, but his translation of Rig Veda is still considered one of the foremost. So it's online. Again, unfortunately, people like me, we have to, because we are not very well versed in Sanskrit, we have to depend on translations. So which is why I thought, this could make probably, and there was, I started asking about people, and one scholar told me, this doesn't have material even for a short story. So I don't know how you're going to write, maybe a microfiction or something. And I was also, before I turned to writing, I was an investment professional. I used to work with a venture capital firm. And experiences of talking to each of these entrepreneurs was really fresh in my mind. Each entrepreneur, they identify a problem in the society, they come up with a solution, they try to, processize it or mechanize it, and they come up with a business proposal. The whole experience of meeting with each entrepreneur, it was positive. And I had a good view of the challenges they face, and especially one particular firm my company had invested in was a med tech firm. And I got a bird's eye view of how many obstacles one has to face, even when they come up with a life-saving technology, how many red tape one faces. All that kind of seeped into my story of, then I really wanted to project a prosthesis as a scientific breakthrough, and look at the whole hard work put in by the male protagonist, Satya. Right, Satya, I named him after Na Satya, who is one of the Ashwina gods. So it's like I wanted that to be, a pinnacle of hard work, which is finally, blessed by the gods. That was the whole, effort of behind making it a, full-fledged novel. And I guess gods blessed my attempt also. Otherwise, something which was supposed to be a short story, it turned out to be a full-length novel.
I'm really like, a single line has become a project. First an executive summary. Sometimes I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and Coimbatore is a city of entrepreneurs. And I've seen a number of business plans, private equity, venture capital propositions. As a writer, and a columnist, I get to interact with some people. I can fully understand, but it needs some ability to do this, because it's not merely a proposition. It is quite entertaining. It's very entertaining to read this book, and we are fed with thoughtfulness while it is also entertaining. And oru kallula rendu manga, they say in Tamil. With one spoon you get 2 mangoes. So that is what you get from here. One is the wisdom and the heritage of our country, and on the other side is the entertainment value. Otherwise, the same wisdom can be given in 10 pages. There are so many people doing that. But here, this is the best way to take it forward because it is through the stories that we can pick it up better. It gets into us in a very subtle way without it being forced. It is like the oxygen that we inhale, and the unwanted things will come out as carbon dioxide, and we will survive in a hale and healthy manner. Now, my request is, Sai Swarupa, is to that you should come up with one more book which talks about the creation of the Smriti or the people living in the Dandakaranya, how they started moving along with life and how these hermitages were and what kind of life that they led, and something connected with the Saptarishis. I'm just thinking aloud, my mind is going wild while talking with you. I'm sure you would have thought about all this and better because you're an ace storyteller. And when you serve aces, and it is an ace, the point is one, and you have got a game set match with this book. That much that I can say. For the love of tennis, at least, I'm an awful tennis player that I was, but at least I could understand where there is a game set and match. And what does Avishi mean?
Avishi actually, yes, so Vishpala literally means a queen. I discovered that, which is when I thought the character should also have a name. So Vishpala means head of a settlement. So probably Avishi, a small settlement. Okay. So Avishi means, it has two meanings. One is earth and the other is river.
Earth meaning earth and a river.
Earth and river.
Bhuma. Bhumi is as Avishi.
Yes, Bhumi and Nadi. And Avishi. Both of them are feminine entities which are crucial to a civilization.
Absolutely. See,
yep.
The woman is the backbone of the Indian society.
Yep.
If the man is a tongue, the woman is the voice. Exactly. If there is no voice, the tongue has no value. And as a man, I can very much, vouch for it because, the woman is known as Ardhangini, one who is, half and equal, the better half, they say, because everything good is brought out. Here we have a very good, better half of the society itself, where from a girl whose life itself had been at risk as a child, she's brought up by some of the wise people in Naimisha, and then she, the manner in which she progresses in life or situations take her, and at one stage she becomes the warrior queen. And that's really interesting. And how, threats can be made into opportunities, and eventually the opportunity can be enshrined in the form of ultimate success. And this story is a very nice representation of that. So India has, a combination of mythology, a combination of history. All of it is very well known, and sometimes it is getting distorted by vested interests. Here today we have authors like Sai Swaroopa, Iyer, and a number of others whom the Verandah Club has been fortunate to interact for some time now, and the live programs for more than 30-35 episodes, we have been able to see the innate strength of these people. And these are lone warriors. They're actually winning single combats, I must say. This story talks about 2 single combats. And when I was in school, they only spoke about Sorab and Rustam, single combat. And they spoke about the single combat in the Greek mythological parlance. I think something to do with the Helen of Troy.
Yes.
There is a single combat. As far as India was concerned, they showed the Indian army as one ragtag, unorganized, crazy people who had long bows, who could not use the arrow properly. But the Indic authors tell us that the Muhammad of Gori had to go back and think for 1 year to come back and defeat our army. because they were able to shoot faster, and in close quarters it was very difficult to defeat the Indians. So similarly here we get to see two very interesting single combats, and here a cheating that can take place in a single combat is brought out very well, like the thing called poisoning or drug abuse. All that is brought out, and dangerous neighbor who wants to swallow us, and how there is a code of conduct that people inside India do not fight with each other, but they support each other at times of an external threat, and how that is very important. The author Sai Swaroopa has brought that out and illustrated it beautifully by weaving this into the story. That's kind of the jacquard in the weave, which is placed, and that has made the woven story, which has been woven, to be all the more interesting. Only if the jacquard and the weave, the warp and the weft are good, it will save the honor called Bharat Mata under civilization. This story is a marvelous weave, and with these jacquards and the design and the narrative, the honor, the pride, and the good aspects of Indian culture and heritage have been brought out in a stunning and amazing manner. I would say this can be made into a very nice movie, because it does not need too much money. It only needs the right setting and right presentation. It does not even need too many people, because the population of India must have been very small prior to 1500 BC, or maybe even earlier. We don't know how many thousand years before. When people talk about invading India, if somebody can tell us what the population of Central Asia is today and what it could have been 4,000 years back, they will definitely say India was never invaded. Because, even today the Central Asian republics will hardly have 10 crore people. And that cold, inhospitable weather, 4,000 years ago, there would have hardly been a million people there. And they imagine them coming with pickaxes, scimitars, bows, arrows, and horse drawn chariots fast through the Khyber Pass, and they come and operate the Dravidian races in the Indus Valley region, push them to the south, to Tamil Nadu, to completely forgetting that they have to cross the Dandakaranya and there's no proof inside, and go and spin racial stories. These
very racial. So Rajesh Garu, while we are on that point, I'd like to share a fun fact. The so-called invasion theory, right? So I had to research a lot of papers and literature behind, scientific literature behind this whole theory. While I was writing, because I wanted a ideal setting which was the banks of Saraswati River. So when I started reading, there was I just got to know that the so-called archaeological proof for so-called invasion, right, was found by one German scholar who found 27 skeletons in the Harappan Valley, and he thought that is a genocide. And he blames Indra for it, saying, your Aryans came and killed these people. And this is a civilization, where the people did not even keep weapons at home. And these such nice, peace-loving people were, massacred by the Aryans on, horses and what all and all. And it just sounded, far from being scientific. It just sounded like a very incoherent, stringing of misunderstandings, or even malicious beliefs were just strung into some poetic stuff, and that became a scientific basis for this theory, and that gave me a reality check about how much we would have misunderstood about our history. Though my sources were all traditional, for a couple of days after reading that paper, I was going back and forth thinking, how much, I would have misunderstood or my sources would have misunderstood, because if everything was based upon, such loosely held, proofs, which are not even proofs, we would have been fed so much of wrong history, and so much of his, that history needs to be corrected in curriculum and, where all in popular culture, everything, everything, so much needs to be corrected.
I agree. There's been a cacophony of thought for such people, and this cacophony of thought has been considered to be something which is very intellectual and thrust upon us. Whenever I take some books and see where I disagree with regard to such theories, because there's a lot of falsehood in the narrative, you will find an n number of all these foreign publications and some old gazetteer or some scholar who does not have any scientific basis for that work.
Yes.
If we look at even in Tamil Nadu, we have this Caldwell. If you look at Caldwell and the circle, they've had some other intentions. I'm not saying they're out to loot, plunder, or their intention, their ideology was something else. And it did not match with what was there. We are only talking about Machiavelli. And there have been many like that. And there's sufficient documentation available with the Muslim historians who have admitted the repeated genocides. And there's sufficient information found in the Vedas, the epics, and the Puranas, which talk about the changes in scripts, language, grammar. The evolution of all that is very clear. It does not need much of an effort. It's just that vested interest, and just as how Kela wants to destroy Naimisha, these people wanted to destroy the intellectual capital of India. Wherever there is intellect, wherever there is knowledge, if you destroy that, these people can be called as the Pol Pots of the world today. The Cambodian story, that is very, I'm comparing all that very allegorically here. That was physical and this is psychological and otherwise, but the intention and the activity and the result is much the same. We should never tolerate this kind of intellectual genocide of knowledge.
That's the right word, intellectual genocide.
So why should we, there is an intellectual pursuit and intellectual right of the Indians and of the Indian knowledge system. And I'm so happy that Sai Swaroopa and others are, cutting off the place and ensuring that this intellectual genocide is no longer taking place, and are also trying to make Mahabharat once again. And I'm so happy to, particularly books like this are making me think better and come with better terms. Thank you so much, Sai Swaroopa, for enlightening people like us, and may your tribe increase, just as how Naimisha is. The writers with Indic thought, Bharatiya thought today, all of you are in Naimisha, and we are the people who are living in Ashtagani, and we have people like Archishman, and there are Kelas at Rishabhavati also today, and we have to be on guard. Eternal vigilance is the price of peace. That much I can say. And thank you so much for being with us today. And the book was very evocative. And if somebody had to look at all these reviews of mine between the good, bad, ugly, very, very bad, and good or normal or medium, this would be a better of my reviews, I must say, because of the quality of the book and the innate creativity and Indianness and patriotism of the author. My humble, appreciation and to the efforts of Sai Swaroopa, and the true Atmanirbhar is taking place now. And I also see that there's a lot of intellectual magnanimity from the Indic authors, and that is also really welcome. There is no hurry to jostle for space. Everybody is creating their own spaces, the intellectual spaces. And I'm glad that the intellectual genocide that has been taking place through the last centuries, and particularly in the last 100 years in particular. Earlier, it was a physical genocide. In the last 100 years or 150 years, it has been an intellectual genocide. And I'm glad that Harikiran Vadlamani Garu, Sai Swaroopa, and everybody else have taken cognizance of that. And this intellectual genocide has been put to a stop now. And let us once again rise, go back to the great India that it was. And may Ma Saraswati and may Sayanacharya and may Lord Vishnu, Dakshinamurti, Hayagriva, and Saraswati, along with the blessings of Narada, give us the requisite wisdom, and may Ganapati remove all the obstacles. And salutations to the Ganamukya here today. Sai Swarupa, you are the Ganamukya.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And all of your blessings, really, we are counting upon that, Rajesh Garu. As you rightly mentioned, there has been an intellectual genocide that has happened in the last 100 years, which has, very unfortunately uprooted our psychological roots, our intellectual roots, which we are trying to bring back today. And I'm so grateful for the platform you have given me, and more grateful for the in-depth review. I hope more and more readers who read the book appreciate that kind of detail, and there is a transformation around, which is much
I
needed.
honestly hope so. And this video will be available today, and let us send this around. It will act as an aid to the book which is already there. Whoever reads this book, if they look at this interactive session, perhaps they could look into the aspects that you have brought forth and I have discussed with you. We have only done a small exercise like the great people at Naimisha, except that they're very tall and we are sitting on their shoulders today. Thank you so much. And it was a great pleasure to have you with us today. Jagannathan, myself, and everybody else at the Verandah Club, on behalf of all the chapters around the world and all the viewers, we are very thankful to have a celebrity author amongst us today. May God bless you with eternal prosperity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Rajesh. Namaste.
Namaste. Oh,